Welcome back to BOGO Biology. In this video, we'll be learning about the structure and function of the heart and the circulatory system. We'll cover the major loops of the circulatory system, the various types of blood vessels, and, of course, the path of blood through the heart and the heart's internal structure. There's also a corresponding study guide handout to go with the video, and it's linked in the video's description. Okay, here we go. The heart is a complex muscular organ that pumps blood throughout the body. It's a major part of the circulatory system, which is the network of vessels that transport blood. Red blood cells carry oxygen on their surface attached to a molecule called hemoglobin. They deliver the oxygen all over the body and pick up one of the cell's waste products, carbon dioxide. Remember, virtually every cell in the human body needs a constant supply of oxygen. If they don't get it, they start to die within a few minutes. The blood must constantly cycle through the three divisions or loops of the circulatory system: the pulmonary circuit, the systemic circuit, and the coronary circuit. In the pulmonary circuit, the blood circulates through the lungs and is saturated with oxygen. In the systemic circuit, the oxygenated blood is delivered to the rest of the body. The coronary circuit supplies the heart itself. Remember that the heart is made of muscle, and thus it requires a lot of oxygen in order to function properly. There are three major types of blood vessels that the circulatory system uses to deliver blood to the tissues of the body: arteries, veins, and capillaries. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. This is their defining characteristic. Usually, this means they carry oxygenated blood. We'll cover the exception later on in this video. Artery walls consist of 3 layers of tissue, and they also have the thickest, most muscular walls of all the blood vessels because the pressure in them is quite high. Some arteries you may have heard of are the aorta and also the carotid arteries, which run up the side of your neck to supply blood to your brain. The major arteries split into minor arteries and then into even smaller ones known as arterioles. Veins carry blood back to the heart, meaning that they usually carry deoxygenated blood. Again, we'll cover the exception later on. I find this one much easier to remember because the word vein is similar to the Spanish and French verb venir, meaning to come. Veins, like arteries, have 3 layers of wall tissue but do not need to be as muscular because the pressure in them is much lower. However, because the pressure in them is low, they also need valves in order to prevent backflow. A vein you've probably heard of is the jugular vein, which runs down the right side of your neck to return blood from the head back to your heart. The major veins split into minor veins and then into even smaller vessels known as venules. Capillary beds are groups of 10 to 100 tiny blood vessels that branch out from arterioles. Red blood cells can fit through them in a single file line. Because they are so small and have such thin walls, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nutrients can easily diffuse in and out of them through their walls. The heart doesn't directly interact with capillaries. To reach the body's capillary beds, the blood must first flow through a series of increasingly smaller blood vessels, and then reverse the process to return back to the heart. The heart pumps blood through the body in a repeating process called the cardiac cycle. During the cardiac cycle, the chambers of the heart rhythmically contract in what's called systole and relax in what's called diastole. During systole, the heart pushes blood out through its major blood vessels, and then the relaxation of diastole allows the chambers to refill. This is much like an ordinary pump that you might use to inflate a bicycle tire. The blood flows through a very specific path through the heart and encounters a number of important structures along the way. This pathway is important because it ensures that only oxygen-rich blood is delivered to all your tissues. We'll notice a few fail-safe mechanisms along the way. Deoxygenated blood is funneled back to the heart through a blood vessel called the vena cava. It has 2 branches, the superior from the upper part of the body and the inferior from the lower part. The deoxygenated blood enters the heart's right atrium. Before we go any further, here's a quick reminder that whenever we're discussing anatomy, we always refer to the patient's right, not our own right. This is why a lot of diagrams appear backwards at first glance. When the right atrium contracts, it pushes blood into the next chamber, the right ventricle, through a one-way valve called the tricuspid valve, sometimes also known as the atrioventricular valve. This valve has flaps that seal tightly to make sure the blood can't flow backwards. The opening and shutting of the valves is what makes the lub-dub sound of a heartbeat. This blood passes through a second valve called the pulmonary valve and into a blood vessel called the pulmonary artery. Even though this pair of blood vessels is carrying deoxygenated blood, the flow travels away from the heart, so it's an artery, not a vein. Once the blood reaches the lungs, gas exchange occurs. Carbon dioxide diffuses out and oxygen diffuses in. The blood is now considered to be oxygenated and changes from dull red to bright red. This is also a good time to mention that deoxygenated blood is not actually blue. It's more of a maroon color. However, I'm showing it as blue here so it's easier for you to see the difference, especially if you're watching on a very small screen. The oxygenated blood returns from the lungs via the pulmonary veins. Again, because the blood is coming back towards the heart, these blood vessels are veins even though the blood in them is oxygenated. The blood re-enters the heart in the left atrium. When the atria next contract, the blood is pushed through the mitral valve into the left ventricle. This valve has two flaps, so it's sometimes also called the bicuspid valve. Finally, the left ventricle contracts and forces blood out into the aorta through the aortic valve. Remembering the order of the valves can be a challenge, so here's a little trick. TPMA, tricuspid, pulmonary, mitral, aortic, also known as toilet paper my arms. Notice how muscular the walls of the left ventricle are, even compared to the right ventricle. The right ventricle only has to be powerful enough to drive blood to the lungs, but the left ventricle has to have enough power to pump blood all over the body. The exterior of the heart also has several important blood vessels. The coronary arteries are one of the first branches off of the aorta, and they supply oxygen to the heart muscle. If the blood flow through the coronary vessels is cut off, oxygen can't reach the heart muscle tissue. This is when the heart muscle starts to die. We call it an acute myocardial infarction, or a heart attack. So how does the heart know when to beat? Cardiac muscle cells have the ability to contract autonomously, but the activity needs to be coordinated in order to be effective. The heart has two nodes that coordinate the harmonious activity of the muscles, much like how a DJ might get a whole crowd to dance to a beat. The first node, known as the sinoatrial or SA node, is located in the wall of the right atrium. Electrical charges from the sinoatrial node cause the two atria to contract together as a pair. The impulse then travels to the atrioventricular node, which is between the right atrium and the right ventricle. It then travels down the walls of the ventricles via a series of specialized fibers, allowing the ventricles to contract. This second process includes a tiny delay, which allows the atria to fully empty their contents into the ventricles before the ventricles contract and push the blood out. In short, after the SA node first gives the command, the AV node repeats it and tells the crowd to drop the beat. This coordinated electrical activity is what you can detect and record using an EKG or electrocardiogram. Hopefully, if you ever see one, it's not a flatline. That wraps up our introduction to the heart and circulatory system. If you found this video useful, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel and checking out a few of my other videos. Thanks again for watching, and please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.